Welcome back to Better Health. I'm Dr. Stowe. I hope you saw the last show we did and gained valuable insight into the issues that revolve around an unhealthy gut. During that show, we touched on a condition called leaky gut and another condition termed GERD. But we were just scratching the surface of how the gut can cause so many different diseases. So to continue that discussion and in an effort to help educate our viewers to become more healthy, I want to welcome back Dr. Arland Hill. And as we continue our discussion about the gut and the diseases an unhealthy gut can cause. Dr. Hill is a licensed chiropractor with a master's in public health and specializes in what is called or termed functional medicine. Arland, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
As a recap, kind of tell us a little bit about what we talked about last time, the GERD, the leaky gut, and what have you.
Yeah, absolutely. When we were discussing this last time, we looked at how the gastrointestinal tract can be so involved in so many different healthcare conditions that are common throughout the entire healthcare arena. It's the gastrointestinal tract gets overlooked a lot of times as being a component in some of these diseases, but when you really look at what the GI tract does and how it handles food, how it has such a strong immune system component to it, it's really easy to see how it becomes linked into these different conditions. And we looked at really what it basically comes down to is leaky gut. And leaky gut is when the gastrointestinal tract has become unhealthy. And the cells in the gastrointestinal tract are not staying nice and tight against each other like they should be, and they're actually starting to more or less start to separate.
So as we age, I see more patients that as they age, they have more conditions, more diseases, and you spoke briefly about autoimmune. So tell us, as we age, why is it our gut is worse off and not doing its job, and how
Sure.
that leads us to autoimmune conditions?
Well, and there's really a couple reasons for that, and it starts, probably most likely it's going to be starting in the stomach. I mean, you could say that as we age, we tend to decrease the amount of protein that we eat in our diets. But it really, even if you're consuming that protein, when it gets into the stomach, we have an inherent tendency to start losing our ability to digest proteins as we age. So when you look at the inability to digest the proteins, and then maybe you couple that with not consuming enough, you're really opening up the door for two things to occur. One is that the gastrointestinal tract, the cells in the GI tract, turn over at a fairly fast rate. So they need energy and resources to be able to repair themselves. And protein is a very strong part of that. The other aspect is that the acid in the stomach acts as a first line defense against microorganisms that we might encounter from our environment, from our food. Mm-hmm. So you're really opening up the door without that first line defense there for those microorganisms to find their way into the small intestine and large intestine.
Okay, so that's some of what we covered last time. So take us now, progress us down. We got the stomach, but tell the audience how the autoimmune conditions, I think you mentioned MS last time as just one. Tell us how the autoimmune conditions can cause MS and how it's related to the gut.
Yeah, and you know, MS is really, it falls under that term of autoimmune conditions, but really probably the bigger ones that we see in our society are going to be the things like the Hashimoto's thyroiditis, so where they can't really control the thyroid levels, and then rheumatoid arthritis. There's many other autoimmune diseases, but those two seem to be the two bigger ones.
Okay.
And really what begins to happen here is that once that gastrointestinal tract becomes unhealthy, it loses its ability to recognize a food or a valuable substance that should cross over into our bloodstream from something that should not. So think about it as being the difference between seeing a food and recognizing a food and being able to take that up and utilize that food, and a bacteria which it should keep at bay. And what happens is it actually loses the ability to say, no, you can cross over, or no, you can't cross over.
And so I've got a 60-year-old patient and they've got rheumatoid arthritis. Mm-hmm. If I'm suspicious that their gut is involved, what do I do? Or if a patient's sitting out there and he's saying, well, you know, my doctor told me it's part of aging. He's listening to us and he's going, if my gut's involved, what do I do now? How do they find that out?
Yeah, well, you can find it out through a couple of different ways. And really probably the best method to do this is what is known as stool testing. And there's really different types of stool tests. But when you're looking at these testing methods, the ones that really deliver the best information are going to be ones that are looking for genetic-oriented information about the microorganisms that are being investigated. So it's actually looking for genetic material for organisms that might be invading or harboring themselves in the gastrointestinal tract, bacteria, fungus, parasites, things of this nature. These tests also allow you to see how food's being digested. You know, we had mentioned the hydrochloric acid, but you can also look at it from the aspect of the pancreas and the enzymes that are produced from the pancreas, and see if the pancreas is actually producing enough enzymes to break down these foods.
And this is all in a stool test?
This is all in a stool test.
So, you know, I've been to a medical doctor, and a lot of patients out there have been to medical doctors. They maybe aren't ordering these tests, or are they so special that the medical, the allopathic community doesn't know about them, or they don't know what to look for?
Well, I think to some degree that is part of the issue, is that the testing that is available within most standard medicine environments is very limited in what it can look for. You really have to go outside and move towards specialized laboratories that this is what they do. They look for these types of things. The other issue with it is that traditional medicine, in terms of the gastrointestinal tract, is really looking for more of some type of gross dysfunction. So they need to see
blood in the stool.
Blood in the stool. They need to see a polyp in the colon, something. You know, they need to see something gross that they can tangibly work with there. It's really not looking down at that microscopic level most times. And it really, if you're not doing that, you're not going to be able to see the dysfunction, and that's what the stool test allows us to pick up.
So someone they've got rheumatoid arthritis or one of these other autoimmune conditions. The allopathic community, the traditional medicine says, well, here's a pill, you're going to live with it. Pharmaceutical drugs really aren't the way to deal with it.
In most cases, no. I mean, they can be used to help in some situations. I mean, to bring down an emergent situation where you really need to bring the system under control. Mm-hmm. They can be used to help, but really they're not going to be the answer to restore the function back to the gastrointestinal tract.
And that's what we want to do. Is everything about CAM is to restore health.
It really is. And to do that, you have to go back and look at, well, what is it that the gastrointestinal tract requires to maintain its health? And there's a couple of key nutrients that come into play: glutamine, zinc, vitamin A, things like this. But it goes back to things like the diet, making sure that you're taking in a healthy diet. The foods in a healthy diet are actually going to promote the bacteria in the gastrointestinal tract to flourish, as opposed to an unhealthy diet, which is going to make it very hard for them to flourish.
Now, most people would say, well, if it was my gut, my immune system should take care of it. Talk to the audience, if you will. My understanding is that a large percentage of our immune system is from the gut.
It really is. The kind of rough estimates on that go around 60 to 70% of your total
So
tissue.
if you've got a bad gut, then your immune system is compromised.
That's absolutely right. It's compromised.
So that's how these conditions can then manifest.
It is, because when you look at this, and we'll go back to the leaky gut scenario, when that leaky gut presentation is present, some of the food particles that become undigested or that are not digested to their smallest levels that they need to be actually begin to become triggers for the immune system. And given that the immune system is a circulating system, it begins to tag these foods fairly quickly. You know, you've got all this what's categorized as lymph tissue right there at the gastrointestinal tract. So you're going to have these lymph cells and these other immune cells that are going to tag these food particles or bacterial particles or whatever it is. It's a non-food or a non-self-recognized tissue. Mm-hmm. It's going to tag that, and the immune system is going to have a heightened response from that.
Tell me, I prescribe a lot of probiotics for people. Talk to the audience about what a probiotic is and what it does.
Right. A probiotic it's a bacteria. And
it's a good bacteria.
It's a good bacteria, and we typically think about bacteria as being bad. And actually, the best example I can give you of this is that we think about, when we hear the term E. coli, most people kind of shy back and go, oh, E. coli, that's bad stuff. Yeah, there are bad strains of E. coli, but there's also some beneficial strains of E. coli that are resident in our gastrointestinal tract, or that should be resident.
And that's very unusual for most people.
Right. But when you look at the probiotics, these are going to be the microorganisms that help maintain the health, especially in the lower colon. They're going to take our high fiber foods, are actually going to ferment them. They're going to provide an energy source for the cells of the gastrointestinal tract. The bacteria are going to have a very protective relationship against other microorganisms, and that they're going to try to outcompete them for resources. So they're pretty necessary to have in our guts.
So one of the things that I do is for patients who are older and maybe having symptoms of GERD, is I'll put them on either hydrochloric acid or a digestive enzyme to help digest and break down those nutrients, and then I'll put them on a probiotic. So for the patient who's out there and they have these symptoms, tell me, because we have a very short amount of time, how is a patient to know if they have a gut condition, and who would they turn to in order to get to the bottom of their condition?
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to do is, do you have any symptoms? So any of the classic things like belching, bloating, reflux-oriented type presentations. Do you get bloated after meals? Things like this. Those are pretty classic symptoms. Diarrhea, constipation, alternating, any changes in your stools, and really if you figure that you have something like that, to try to find help from someone.
But that's what I want. How does the audience know who to turn to? If they can't call you or they can't call me, who do they turn to?
I think the best approach is to look at some of the functionally oriented resources out there, the professional organizations that really try to promote and emphasize functional medicine. The Institute for Functional Medicine, there's an organization named A4M. The American Clinical Board of Nutrition has a grouping of doctors that are very versed in these topics. Any of those organizations would be able to provide a doctor that could help a patient, or that could direct a patient to a doctor that could help them out.
Arland, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Folks, when you are watching this tape and you're listening at what Arland has said, if you have any questions about these organizations and you need more information, give us a call or hit us at our website.